Welcome to the McCombs Wellness Collective podcast, where we aim to improve overall health and wellness of the UT McCombs MBA community through promoting healthy habits and sharing personal wellness stories. Many stressors can emerge during an MBA, and we hope that this podcast will help you prioritize your health during your time at McCombs and onward through the rest of your life. All right, we're back on another week of the Wellness Collective at McCombs podcast. I'm joined today by second-year MBA Brian Aninzo, who's a former Navy service warfare officer and is now dominating here at McCombs. Thanks for doing this, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so I want to start with your story, where you're coming from and why McCombs.
Yeah, so I call Houston my home now. I was born in Germany, grew up there, and when I was 9, moved to a little suburb north of Houston called Conroe. Did my undergrad here at Texas, here at UT, and after graduation, didn't really know what to do. For the longest time, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, so I was pre-med, and then just didn't really work out for me, didn't want to do that anymore, so I come from a military kind of family, and so I started looking into joining the Navy as an officer. Took the kind of like first job that they offered me, which was surface warfare. And I said, cool, I don't know what that means. Sounds cool. Let's do it. So then was stationed out in San Diego for 6 years. I was on the LCS-1, Littoral Combat Ship 1, USS Freedom. Did a deployment out in Central South America, doing like counter drug interdiction. And really loved that, and found that, hey, okay, now was the kind of next chapter, or the next time for next chapter of my life, and it wasn't going to be the Navy, so was looking into how can I transition out, and saw the MBA as the best transitioning tool, especially for vets. So being from Texas and I loving the city of Austin, I was drawn to McCombs right away. And then once I got to meet people from the program, the current students at the time, just fell in love with the program and the culture. And now I'm here and loving it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a very cooperative culture. Everyone is wanting every person to succeed no matter what they're recruiting for. And I want to touch on, you said you were on a littoral combat ship. Mm-hmm. So just so people have an idea of kind of what the daily life is and what it's like on board. How big was the crew, and what would be your week schedule on a deployment?
Yeah. So littoral combat ship is a relatively small vessel, about 400 feet. And just for like scale, you have ships that are over 1,000 feet. So relatively small but fast. We could go up to like 40 knots, 40 nautical miles an hour, and it was a minimally manned crew, which was kind of like a new concept for surface warfare, where the idea was like things would be automated, and you really just had like essential personnel kind of running the ship. So we had about 50 people in our crew, 50, 60. And again, for like scale, like a 500-foot destroyer would have like 200 people, I think. So I wore a lot of hats in my job, and everybody wore several hats. So kind of day to day, I guess for deployment would be, because there's not a lot of people, you're kind of on watch. You have a three-person rotation. So usually they call them 5 and dimes. So you do like every 5 hours, or 5 hours, then you get 10 hours off, and then 5 hours on again. You kind of build a routine for yourself. So you as you know, you're a submariner, but you go and watch. And for me, that was, as the officer deck, just kind of out on the bridge, just making sure we go where we need to go, and we're there at the time that we need to be. My main job was also navigator, so I was also kind of making sure that we were just safely navigating the whole time.
Nice.
And then after that, once I'm not on watch, I would take an hour to work out. and then do the rest of your work because then you still have a job outside of the watch, and then try to get a few hours of sleep in.
Yeah, that's it sounds like a struggle with sleeping, still getting your workout in. Because were you a pretty active, did you work out a lot before going into the Navy?
Yeah. I was always pretty active, actually. So, like I said, I come from a military family. So my dad was in the Army, and I have memories of being young and he and I like doing push-ups together when he would like pretend like have a little physical fitness test for me just for fun.
It's a lot of fun.
yeah, super fun. And then I have two older brothers who were also pretty fit. One of them is a professional Muay Thai fighter and instructor. The other one like worked in a gym like his whole life almost. So yeah, just was always active.
How was that transitioning from being a student and, really owning your own schedule, having a lot of time, and now you're shifting to the Navy where everything, everything's planned, everything is on the calendar. Was it difficult to get in that time to work out and work on your health?
No, I actually thought it was a lot easier because now with time being such a valuable resource, and everything planned out, like you said, it made it to where there was no excuse for me to not work out because, well, I couldn't put it off. Like when I was a student, you'd say, yeah, well, I'll go do this later. I got time. I can do something else for a little bit. But when I was in the Navy, it's like, okay, I'm off watch. I got to get my workout in right now because if I don't, I'm going to either fall asleep or get dragged into something else. So it was always the routine was always get off watch, go to the gym, get back, and then depending on the hour, work or sleep, and then work. So
are you a big believer in getting your workout done first thing of the day, like prioritizing it? Or?
Big time. Yeah. I just like to just get out of the way because then I don't think about it. If I don't do it in the morning, I always feel like it's hanging over my head and I'm thinking, okay, when am I going to get this in? But if I do it right in the morning, then now it's like, one, you feel good because it's like, all right, you feel accomplished. And then two, you just don't have to think about it anymore. And you just go on with your day and take on the next challenge.
Yeah, I completely agree. They make it a little easier here at Rowling. Though they have the gym downstairs. So even if you don't get it done in the first thing, like you can kind of do it later and take a shower and still go throughout the day. But I definitely like getting it done with, not having it hanging over your head, like you said.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But with the Navy too. So you figured it out with staying in shape and your health in that aspect. You were talking about sleep. You called it 5 and dime, so 5 hours of watch and then 10 off. And so is it structured so that you have like a 24-hour cyclical day?
No, it wasn't at first. So we changed it halfway because it was just so brutal on us. But no, when it was just the 5 and dimes at first, it was like you slept when you could, and it was no set time that you would sleep, and that was really hard on everybody. But then eventually, and I forget like how we had a really awesome like watch bill coordinator who set all this up, and she made it to where we had static watches basically. So you always had a set time that you would stay on watch, and then a set time when you're not on watch, and then you can kind of get into a rhythm that way. So that was super helpful. But still, it was just like you're averaging. You'd be lucky if you got like 6 hours of sleep. Yeah. Normally it's like 4, and that was really hard. And I feel like I am just now kind of getting back into good sleep habits because it wasn't even like it's still not. Even outside of deployment, when I was in the Navy, I wasn't sleeping very much because you still had to stand watch in port, and those weren't static. So you're just kind of sleeping when you can.
Yeah, no, that's something I didn't realize going in the Navy is the in-port duties I almost would rather be at sea.
Yeah. My recruiter never told me about all the watch that I'd be standing.
But did you find, so now that you're able to like set your sleep schedule, how much do you value sleep? Is it important to you?
Yeah, it's it's a basis of like kind of my day. I feel pretty fortunate in that I feel like I can sleep 6 hours and still perform pretty well, 4 to 6 hours and perform pretty well, and I think that's from my Navy training. But definitely, I'll feel it if I do that for a few days in a row. I'll feel slow and it'll be hard. Like if I'm reading something, it might take me another pass or two to be like, what did I just read? But sleep is everything, right? It's huge.
Are you a believer in power naps, or you think you want to get that 8 hours at night?
Yeah, no, I'm not a big power napper. I used to be, and then my wife kind of like got on me like she just like was like, you're always sleeping. And it kind of would disrupt my evenings, my actual sleep too. If I slept an hour or two or 20, I know like people say like the 20 minutes is like the ideal, but I could never do that. I'm always like, oh, I'll just lay down for a few minutes, and then like 2 hours later, and then you're like up till midnight, till 2. You're like, dang, I shouldn't have taken that nap.
No, definitely.
But I mean, if people need it, go for it. I like to just power through. I'm more just like, let me just either go for a walk or like let me like drink a little bit of coffee so I can stay awake till like 9 or 10 and then get like the full 8 hours of sleep.
No, that's so true. That you need to have that thing. It doesn't have to be a nap, but something to like recharge. It seems like, because I'm sure it feels like everyone hits a wall at some point during the day. But
for sure.
I want to. So with the Navy too, the other aspect, nutrition's got to be tough because you're at sea. I don't know if you bring your own food or you're just eating the chow hall meals. And how did you approach that? And has it changed since you've been out of the Navy, like your diet?
Yeah. So for nutrition has kind of like been a big thing for me my whole life. My parents are Filipino. I grew up in Germany, so luckily I was exposed to a lot of different foods, and just have had a really long journey with this kind of thing. So in the Navy, it actually wasn't that hard to eat well because having that minimally manned crew, they were given the cooks were given a little bit more liberty on the food that they cooked for us. So it was really cool. Like every morning, you got to have eggs to order.
Nice.
And then they would have like a full like spread out to where you could make your own omelet or whatever. They always had like a big thing of spinach that I would like load up on. And then lunch always differed, but it's like they always had like a vegetable kind of option, and they always had a salad bar. So if anything, if I really was kind of feeling like, hey, I need some greens in my life, you could just opt for the salad.
Would you say like your mindset is you're trying to stay away from processed foods or?
No, my mindset was kind of just like, I'm a big believer in just like everything in moderation.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe if the cooks had a little bit of Spam out, like I was gonna eat that. One, because I grew up eating it, and two, just because like I think it's okay to have like a little bit of it every now and then, right? But then you balance that out with some vegetables, and then I would tend to still feel okay and be okay.
Oh, definitely. Is Spam a Filipino thing? Because my mom grew up.
I think so.
Eating Spam too.
I just learned recently that Spam is made in Minnesota, of all places.
Really?
Yes. Actually, I think it's also like Austin, Minnesota, is where
that's
it's
cool.
made. But I think it got brought over like during like World War II or something, because it's canned and it's durable. Protein, yeah, and then just like the people there, the Filipinos, were like, this is really good. And it just kind of became part of their diet.
Yeah. I know in Hawaii too, you can get the little musabi.
Musubi? Yeah, so good.
But yeah, I like the moderation thing because there's too much good food in the world. Like I don't want to deprive myself.
Exactly.
And then, so another thing I want to touch on is, I know you are a big time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I didn't know your older brother was like a Muay Thai fighter. So when did you start getting into martial arts, and why Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, that was another thing that started very young. Like I said, my brothers were very fit, and they were both also into like martial arts. Grew up watching like every Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, watched a lot of Dragon Ball Z. So I was always around like that kind of stuff, right? And at first, like my first kind of introduction to it was through my brother with Muay Thai. So I did that a little bit on and off as a kid. And then when I went to college for my undergrad, got into boxing, did that throughout my undergrad. And then kind of like got tired of getting hit in the face. didn't want to get hit so much anymore. So started looking into jiu-jitsu, which is supposed to be like the gentle art, but is kind of a little far from it in a way. But looked into jiu-jitsu and fell in love with that. It's just, I don't think there's any other kind of martial art. Maybe there's a few, but it's a really big one, and where like athleticism, size, age, like those things don't really matter that much, right? It's like I can't think of many other like martial arts where I could go up against like a guy that's like 6'4", 250 pounds and still be okay, right? So there's just so much to it. There's so many intricacies, and it's one you can do. There are many like 60-year-old practitioners at my gym who still practice and grapple, and that's kind of cool. That like there's some longevity to it. It's maybe like the golf of martial arts.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you're saying it's not just striking, or there's very little striking, right?
There's no striking.
There's no striking.
There's no
Okay,
striking. Yeah.
And that's where you're taking a lot of the licks. And like when you're boxing, I mean, I just see those professional fighters when they get older, like it's got to have some brain damage.
For
like
sure.
It can't be good for you.
Yeah.
So the longevity thing I think is huge. What like surprising benefits did you get from martial arts that you didn't think? Like, of course, a lot of people get in because they want to defend themselves. They want to be able to fight back if someone attacks them.
Yeah.
Has there been any other like surprising benefits for you?
Well, one, it's just like an incredible workout. To go, if you've ever gone like 5-6 minutes grappling, which kind of involves a little bit of wrestling too, right? And like some judo. It's just the best workout. You're using every muscle in your body, and you move in ways that like in other sports you don't move. That's one. The second, I think it's like like you said, a lot of people get into it for self-defense, and maybe for some like some might get into it for like a little bit of the bravado that it gives you. But I think what's more important is like the kind of humility that it offers, because again, in this sport, it's like, you can have people half your size beat you up, and that does something to your ego a little bit, where you're like, hold on a second, like I can bench 200 pounds, and this person could break my body,
Yeah.
So it just kind of just gives you this humility, and then it just kind of prepares you too for like when you putting yourself deliberately in uncomfortable situations every day. It just prepares yourself for other challenges, like where now you're not anxious about this presentation because earlier you were getting crushed, right? So there's a lot of mental and the physical benefits that I'm still uncovering,
Yeah, it's something that seems like you can just learn the rest of your life, always get better and better. You're never going to be perfect.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
So if people want to start trying this, what was your approach? Like when you all right, I want to do jiu-jitsu. Did
Yeah.
you say I'm going to do it once a week and just find a gym to go to, or how does that work?
I first started in my undergrad too, so I mixed it in a little bit with boxing, and there was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu club here. I couldn't like pay for a gym membership; it was just too expensive. But the club was free or minimal. So I first started with that, and I can't remember how often I go. I mean, I would try to go as much as I could. I still kind of struggled with this up till recently with consistency. It's this isn't it's not a sport I think that you can go to once or twice a week and be good. It really is like you got to be consistent with it. There's like if you have a good understanding of the fundamentals, like you'll be okay. But there's still like if I take a week or two off, I'll come back and I'll be like, man, what do I do with my hands?
Wow.
I don't know.
Ricky Bobby.
Yeah, Ricky Bobby. I don't know. So, but yeah, now kind of with like the NBA for me slowing down, I've just been able to kind of get really consistent with it. And that's when I've seen my progress kind of rocket.
How have like mentors or teachers helped you? Have you had the same kind of coaches throughout your time, or can you find like good aspects? Like, how do I know if I go to a gym that this instructor is actually teaching me good things?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'll start with kind of like my mentors and teachers for that. I'm super fortunate to have had like my kind of very first coach in jiu-jitsu was a fellow officer in the Navy. He was in the wardroom with me, black
nice.
belt. And he set up a gym, or like he bought mats, and we had a pretty good sized gym on the bottom of the ship. And he invited people. He's like, hey, I will teach you jiu-jitsu.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we were probably the only like jiu-jitsu gym like 10 feet below the surface of the water. And we would do that every day for 2 hours. And there was maybe like 4 to 6 of us, kind of definitely like 3 core people that would go every time. And it was incredible because it was like getting a private instruction from, black belt. And he was so good. He like made me fall in love with the sport. And yeah, so, and kind of to your second part of the question, how do I know if what I'm teaching is good? Jiu-jitsu is involves a lot of different kind of moves, right? And I mean hundreds, maybe thousands of moves. And if you're just getting taught a move and going through the motions, you're not going to remember it. But he did a really good job at laying down the fundamentals and being like, hey, like most of the time you're going to look for like, I'm like this term, but you're going to look for an underhook. And he used to say like underhook is king. And he like was really big into like, he was a big wrestler too. And so we worked on kind of like our double and single leg takedowns, and we would work on that over and over and over. And he just like built this fundamentals that you can now it's like if I don't remember a move, I can regress to that and be like, okay, like let me take this step by step. What do I want? Let me find the underhook real quick. Now let me break the grip. So look for that. Look for a person that will really get into the fundamental moves, and also like the kind of high percentage ones that will make it to where you're like always kind of succeeding in jiu-jitsu.
I love that. I can definitely see it like in baseball. Like I played baseball growing up, and you definitely know there's key fundamentals that you always do or you never do, like type thing. Like stay away from this. Yeah. And if you're not being taught those, you're kind of lost in the sauce. So yeah, I like that advice. The other thing on the Wellness Collective, one reason I wanted to be more involved in this is I'm a big proponent of people taking care of their mental health. How has jiu-jitsu, has that impacted your mental health at all? Or is there other ways that you go about that?
Yeah, with jiu-jitsu, I think the biggest way is just kind of the de-stressor of it. The other ways that I kind of accomplish that or aid myself in mental health is big. This is kind of a military cliche, big on stoicism. So like to read a lot about that. Ryan Holiday, really good, kind of like modern stoic. And I kind of just like think back on those words. He talks a lot about the four virtues of stoicism: courage, temperance, justice, wisdom. So I draw on that a lot. There's a big phrase, memento mori, which is remember you will die, which is kind of, at first is a little morbid, but then when you think about it, it's like, it just puts things into perspective a little bit for me, where it can be interpreted. I interpret it in two different ways. It's like, hey, my life is going to end, so just go for it. Maybe it might be like the modern day YOLO, right?
Yeah, send it.
Yeah, but then the second way to interpret it too is maybe kind of the same, but it's like, if I'm nervous about things or if I'm stressed, it's like, hey, I'm going to die one day, and like it's not going to matter. Like, these things aren't going to matter in the grand scheme of things. Talk a lot about like people have been in this situation. Thousands of people have been in your situation before, and they've gotten through it. So like you will too. So kind of like thinking and meditating on those. And then and then the second, like my big thing is just my faith, which is something that's wavered a lot throughout my life, but something I always kind of go back to, and I can thank my parents for that. But just like, I try to go to mass every Sunday, and it's become my time where I can, sit in a quiet place and kind of reflect, pray, and think about, what's going on. And kind of draw strength and wisdom from that.
Yeah, it's I'd say the people that are proponents of meditation, it seems like that would have the same.
Definitely.
There's having time set aside alone with your thoughts and kind of resetting.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, especially in the MBA or even in work, you get focused on, okay, next task.
Yeah.
And you lose sight of the bigger picture. So I really like that advice.
Yeah, there's just a whirlwind in your head, and so just taking the time to slow that down and kind of parcel it out and put all these things back to where they need to go.
Yeah.
So there's not a mess in your mind,
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's I don't know what cathartic, is that the word?
Yeah.
But Brian, I mean, you're a great example, I think, of what I want to spread in the Wellness Collective, of people prioritizing your health, staying in good shape, mental health, and then getting after it still, having living your life to the fullest type thing. So I really appreciate you coming on here, sharing your story, your little tips and tricks. Jiu-Jitsu, I still haven't tried it out. I know I keep telling you I will. So
yeah,
that might
whenever
change.
you want. I got some mats at the house. We can start there, or if you want to come to the gym, you're always welcome. Anybody else, if you're listening.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, your second year, so this is the last semester. We got to pick your brain for sure for you.
Let's do. And there are a few people that train here, actually, and I'm like the worst one.
Okay.
So I know in your year. So shout out to Alan, who's like, I think he's like a black belt. He's the first year, and then we got Nolan and David Dossett, who are also phenomenal. So yeah, there's a few of us out there.
Hey, maybe the wellness, that could be an event. We could have like a little roll session.
I've always had this dream. I always thought like it'd be so funny to like have like a battle royale with other MBA programs and see like how we kind of how we do.
Dude, that's a great idea. Yeah, one day.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, like the soccer club has like the Winter Classic. Like we should. Let's get a NBA cage match going.
I think we'd have a good shot. We got a lot of military guys. I don't know if that's normal, but there's a lot of.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
we'll see. But any final takeaways for health and wellness before we call it?
Not a novel thing, but super important. Just everything in moderation.
Yeah.
Everything in moderation.
All right. Well, thanks, Brian.
All right.
Appreciate it. And see you on the mats.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the McCombs Wellness Collective podcast, where we record weekly episodes during the semester to promote healthy habits and learn about personal wellness journeys. Stay well, my friends, and hook 'em horns.